Alrighty then. This thing should be live and we're ready to put everything together. So, hi, I'm Chris from Airwindows. We're going to do some plugin coding today. And I'm going to get my chat ready so that people can be on the screen. That being something that I have to do in OBS because I'm not using the kind that automates that stuff for you. So hey, I was just in the middle of fooling around with something that is still running behind me. And I'm damned if I know whether I can show you what I was doing. Perhaps only in the most primitive of ways. The blinking lights. That is one channel of the drum system. And what it is, I've got it patched directly up to this thing. That is a new form of the breakbeat thing that I was doing for my weird demo. And I've discovered something neat I'd love to show you, and I don't know how. Because here's the thing. I have no good way of patching it through to anything that makes a sound. So I'm a bit stumped here. The speakers are dedicated to use with the laptop. Kind of like this. Hello. There we go. So that's set up to do that. And unless I was able to patch the thing that's making the noise into the laptop and through. And that's such a crazy idea, it just might work. So maybe we'll give that a shot. So I'd really like to show you what it is that I'm doing. It's a very weird, strange thing. Anybody who's actually here, it looks like there's about 4 folks or something like that. This isn't going to be a long stream today. So in a sense, I am simply dedicating my attention to whatever seems like a good idea at the time. Let's go and make something happen. Here's a couple of wires. Here's the output of the thing. And it almost reaches. Let me drag this over. This chair's a bit of a pain in the butt. It broke and I have not yet done anything to fix it. So it kind of sags. Hi there, OQ. So what I'm going to do is shuffle stuff around and try to make it so that I can patch this through somehow. Because I do have here, even though I'm as usual not prepared. I'm bad at being prepared. I do so many other things that I guess it's just impossible. I can patch this through to here, at which point I have made a thing. Make a new file. Oh, I'm knocking all of my stuff all over. This card just fell down. And I'm pretty sure I had something else there that was for me to remember that has also fallen down. Where'd it go? There it went. Yeah, this actually has to do with the thing that I was wanting to show you. And I'm damned if I know whether I can make this work, but it is worth a try. Let's run some other programs in here, like utilities. God, what do we even want here? It's not disk utility, it's the MIDI utility. Where does that live? It should be audio MIDI utility. Do I have it up here for some reason? Oh dear. Okay, perhaps under music. Yeah, I moved it to music for no good reason. So, built-in input. I do not see whether that is actually going to do a thing. Do I have line in? I do. So this might make a horrible loud noise. I guess we'll just have to find out. Okay, that's messed up. Hang on. We're getting a lot of output, even though that's actually the microphone. That's terrifying. What shall we do now? But I am getting a pass-through. Built-in input, line in. Now what have we got? And if we make that mono. Okay, this is what I was going to show you. Check out this bad craziness. I can't move my chair. Help me. I'll scooch behind the chair. I'll be standing up. You can at least hear me. So what I'm doing here, you can't see me, but you can hear what I'm doing and hear me talking, is this. I have this thing. As you can hear, it is going ham. This is a breakbeat generator. So what we're doing is we're re-triggering this as it goes. But it gets crazier than that. Like, see what we got here? I can make it re-trigger at a very quick rate, which is what we're hearing now. And the whole idea is to get this so that I can make it work with the rest of the system, but fill in that breakbeat craziness. And we have different samples to choose from. And it's sampling at this rate, or I can, that's a 4-beat, or I can tell it to be a 5-beat. So make a note of this tempo, because the thing that I'm driving this with is a Turing machine. It's making the moving lights that you see just barely. It is. But I'm mangling it enough that I'm probably not going to get kicked offline for doing it. When I turn up scale, what the scale knob does, and I better turn down my mic level, I'm breaking everything. When I turn up scale, scale is plugged in to the thing that changes what sample it is. And all of these are fairly long clips, but they all start in a different place. So when we turn up scale, every time it re-triggers, it's just changed which thing it's going to look at. Scale is another control voltage that is based on taking the bits in the Music Thing modular and making them into a variable, making them into a voltage. Now notice that it is kind of, the period of this is still this. But when we start varying which sample to choose with this technique, very small amounts of extra input I wind up getting a really bonkers breakbeat. And we can adjust it with the station control here. And this is still only on the same 4-beat thing, but when we bring this voltage in, it goes crazy. Hear how it's like a, God, I am so tangled up in wires, oh my God, and I'm so loud, I'm distorting everything. Hear how this is acting like a loop, except for not quite? The way that this patching like breaks down causes it to be completely hilarious as far as the stuff it throws at you. So I now have this hardwired into my system that this is just available. This is just an audio output. And it's being re-triggered all the time, so it kind of is held to a beat of some kind. So now we're on an 8-beat. Which if we turn off the scale, if we turn off the CV coming out of it, that becomes this. But then we bring just a little bit of this back in. It just goes completely crazy. And of course I can adjust the station knob. We can turn the randomization up again. We'll make a 16-note sequence and randomize it lots. And this is strictly just about re-triggering it all the time. So we can adjust the station to dial in a particular sample hit to start with every time. There's a kick. So now this is a random pounding beat. And then if I sneak in just a little bit of this scale for the control voltage, and now it's doing a regular beat. So this whole weird system is capable of producing regular things like this, but with just a tiny touch of a knob, you throw it into complete chaos and randomness. Like this. Oh, wait, we're not random. So you see, it'll just play itself doing this with a little extra glitchiness in there. Oh, but it can get worse. Now it's gone chaotic. Now it's going even more insane. And this is all through fiddling with little controls on a digital sampling system. So this is the thing I wanted to show you. So this is what I was doing this morning. I don't know whether you actually enjoy this, but I'm moving like 3 knobs to get all the variation between these things. And to some extent, they're recallable. Like all of this resides within the context of the thing that I'm fooling with. So let's unplug that and power it down, because that's enough of that madness. We had work to do. That doesn't count as work to do. That counts as me making weird, horrible noises, which is kind of like work to do, only not. Boop. With a bit of luck, next time I try to make something happen along those lines, it'll go a little bit quicker because I have hard patched some of this stuff together. Okay. Let's get the coding side of things together, which is going to mean dragging this over and going to the screen so that you can see what's being coded. Yeah, all that insane breakbeat stuff was being done at 118 beats per minute. It was being done at the default speed. And I see that I'm apparently still here, so YouTube did not recognize the amend break in that and kick me offline. I believe they're capable of doing that. I believe they're like, oh, that's the amend break. You might possibly be sampling. So, and the reason I say that is because when I was setting up the Mac EQ, which seems to have gone over pretty well, I honestly feel as if it is not a perfect it ain't a perfect clone, but apparently it's good enough, so the people found it useful. And what you heard was not even me running the sampler into something like Mac EQ to make it sound more insane. So again, it's that, and it's not even into a distortion, and it's not even resampled to be at higher. I'm going to need to go through and do the same stuff that I was doing with the amend break that I made, because that whole process is me figuring out whether I can set it up so that the underlying ride cymbals are regular and the time of the break is divided up by time rather than divided up by transients, because I felt that would be kind of useful. And I don't know whether it's useful or not. I feel like I've made a big mess with that, but it's the kind of mess that I enjoy deeply, so not a bit sorry. But I did waste a bit of time because I went through using a program which is actually this very program, Twisted Wave. Twisted Wave has a feature called batch processing that I show you now. And what I do is I add files to the batch, however many files you might want. And there are all these various edits of the break. And then I can go through and add actions like convert sampling rate, change various things, downsample it to 12 bits, apply dark, and upsample it again. And make SD cards that I can put into the little sampler deal that I've got. One of the reasons I'm paying so much attention to that is now that I'm doing the Wednesday live streams for synthesizer hacking, it's not going to stay at simple oscillator forever. One of the things we're going to do is take this same technology of these little bits of perf board and figure out how to put a teensy on them and power it and run control voltages and things into it, because the teensy is literally the thing that was making all that noise. The music thing, modular radio music, and chord organ runs off of a teensy. And the additional stuff on that module, which you can build yourself. It's actually quite affordable. But the additional stuff on the module is largely for buffering inputs and outputs and things. And if we're willing to consider it a sort of sacrificial teensy, we don't necessarily have to do that. We could hook one up, power it up, program it by plugging it into the computer and telling it what to do, and then just take the output directly and run it to stuff. So it could serve as a little tiny sampler, because what we just heard was effectively a teensy running as a little tiny sampler, and in fact being re-triggered as if it was a sampler. And it's weird and glitchy and terrible, but that can be fun too. So let's get on to some of the stuff that we're doing. Like, you can see some of the things I'm up to here. And indeed, I can show you some of them. For instance, I've been trying to get together a thing that people call Z-plane filters. I'll give you a little glimpse of what that's like, but it's not going to happen overnight, because one of the things to deal with it is that I'm going to have to get a real device to study and learn how they work. But what I've got, if this is showing me what I'm doing here, the thing with the Z-plane filters is it's the special way of doing biquad filters where they're distorting part of it. And I've got it set up so that I've got my 4-stage dry to wet control, so I can do sort of a 4-pole filter. I think this isn't connected to anything, and I think this isn't connected to anything. So I've only got these two knobs doing anything at the moment. And the deal is that people using this particular type of sampler, they didn't really go for the crazy, weird Z-plane stuff, but they liked the sound of effectively this. Let's set it to basically 12 dB. This apparently has something going on as far as having a good sound. And this is me learning how to distort parts of the filter, but it's distorting parts of the filter in the way that I do it. And I was in the middle of making an experiment. I suppose I could try it and see whether I get anything. This being just basically drums and stuff. And I had made an example that I haven't heard yet. In my process of figuring out what I'm doing with all of this. I'm starting with X, but there is a Y version, which I believe I have done and made to do something. We'll find out. Let's see whether this does anything. Okay, it passes a sound. This doesn't do anything. You'll probably hear it more easily with another track. The Y filter was about going, we're distorting, and when we do that, we're clamping the variables because we're distorting using a sine calculation. And if we don't clamp the variables, they'll continue to wrap around and cause wavefolding. But the idea with the Y filter is, so long as we're doing that, what would happen if we didn't clamp the variables and then we did get wave shaping? And we get something that's kind of like this. 0 to 25 is one stage of filtering. but we're not hitting this with much gain, so we don't really hear anything. To 0.5 is 2 stages of filtering. We begin to hear it. I've also got my low frequencies in here. And then as we continue, as I move the controls in the low frequency range, it starts to glitch out and do unpleasant things, like there's a crackle and stuff. I don't know whether that's consistent with the real device, so we're not leading off with the ones that I'm calling Z low pass. The eventual goal is to get to where we can do that. But the hope is that with this wave shaping stuff, I can make interesting noises. And let's stop this and look at a different sample. For instance, Alien Kittens, which is very loud, and so that will distort our filter that I'm demonstrating. And so this is the one that's not really going to be like a EMU filter, but you can hear that it's distorting quite aggressively. And as I turn the gain up, it starts doing interesting things. So this is probably in the zone of what people are looking for out of these filters, because this is clearly not just a regular old low-pass filter. Even when it's at the highs, it makes a sound. And then I've got it so that it's kind of loading on more gain as it goes lower and lower. To the point where it's doing this weird thundery thing. I don't know if that's consistent with the real device though, so this can't actually be the final Z low pass. But one thing I can do is set it up so that you can kind of hear the ratchety noise. I don't have that solved yet. I might not for the initial versions of these. It is biquads I'm supposed to be using, but they have something going on where they're interpolating, and that will cause problems. The real deal thing is technically not using the right filter for the purpose, and also doing a bunch of strange things. So we have the clean signal, and then we have a real obvious kind of grind, and that's inside the filter itself. So the next question is, what do we get when we do the Y filter, which is, why would you do that? Why would you put in a distortion element that basically just does full-on wavefolding? And it's to do stuff like this. So the tone coming out of this is distortions inside the filter. We can also throw this into something like McAdee or whatever for additional effect. But this is the kind of stuff they were looking for, just not accurately. The drum and bass folks were using EMU filters to do stuff like this with, because the EMU filters would distort when you push them. But it doesn't distort like this because I'm doing something different here. And we can put it to exactly 0.5 for exactly 12 dB per octave, or maybe it's 24, I forget. And you can kind of plainly hear there's a bit of crackle there. I don't know whether the real thing does that. I'm guessing probably not, but who knows, because it's part of doing this with a biquad filter. Up here it does less of it. And people are shooting for ways of making these funny kinds of noises, and making it do this and then distorting it again and so on and so forth, and making really gnarly kinds of effects. There's also high passes that are very useful and band passes that are very useful. I haven't got those coded together yet. I've just got this kind of thing, where it's your Airwindows sine-based overload run inside the actual filter, inside the feedback element. Now, the way that the EMU does it is it's a straight-up hard clip. It's a straight-up aliasing hard clip, and apparently people liked the way that sounded. And it's worth finding out what was going on with that so that I can try to model it. But this does make neat sounds on its own. Like, we could do that, or we can do, throw this on and see what happens when we do a sine wave effect while doing this. So here is a, probably, what is it? 12, so probably 24 dB per octave, unless it's 48, I forget. 4 levels of this. And as I manipulate the low pass control, what happens is we're going to start to go into wave folding. And you can plainly hear the noise that the zipper noise is making. Again, that's going to be a problem. I don't know whether I'm going to be able to fix it or not, because the biquad freaks out when you do subtle motions as well, so remains to be seen. Like, I can make it pop like this, making that loud 30 dB noise is moving the biquad too suddenly. And it's kind of the same thing with this ratchety noise. But you can kind of hear the neat tonality that it adds. And that's all through distorting part of the feedback loop in the filter. But I'm distorting it using the sine-based distortion and not clamping it. So this Y low pass is causing us some wave folding there. And it's getting us a nice sort of subsonic rumble going on there, compared to this. You can probably hear how that would be useful. I believe it's audible. You can hear it shaking my room, so that's got to be audible. Just for fun, let's normalize this and do that again. There, now it'll be much more extreme. So everything you're hearing is the sine wave that I'm running with. It'd be even more fun if it was a sweep, but I don't think I have anything that'll do that right off the top of this application. And it is putting a distortion in, and the distortion is wave folding because the Y incarnation of these filters like you can plainly hear the crackling. I honestly would like to be able to do something about that. As you can hear, I haven't got a solution for it right now. My regular biquad filters will do the same thing. But you can hear a nice little edge on things. And then we can dial it in. That crackling is really annoying, I gotta say, but depends upon whether I'd be able to fix it or not. So let's do a coding thing. Seeing as spent almost an hour showing you the various things that are percolating or simmering in the Airwindows Mad Scientist lab. So I've got somebody who's been using Airwindows plugins for a very long time who was real interested in having me fix Infinity a little bit. And I'll tell you how and why. Firstly, let's see whether I've got it. Yep, I seem to have made it. If this builds, I should in theory have a Infinity 2, which is for right now exactly the same as Infinity is. Because here's the deal. Let's load up a drum sound and fire it up. What's going on with this is people were quite happy with what it was for some reason. Even though I ended up thinking this was not a very good soundscape maker. We've got our filter for fading it up and down. Here's the problem. When you loaded it up into your computer and made stuff with it, it did a very good job of sitting on a texture until sound came in to make another texture. And I believe I can demo that as well by loading the right thing. For instance, here is a note silence. And if I do that with the same thing, what we get is a nice little background noise. And we can put in damping, but damping will only soften the texture. And we can fool with size to like glitch it out or whatever. And people apparently are very into this. I was surprised. I didn't think that it was so good, but it apparently really makes it for people. We can throw in the damping. And then there it is, putting in another input again. So this is now a thing. The problem with this plugin was that if you used it in your DAW, excuse me, what would happen is you could do this kind of thing, but then when you stopped playback, the plugin just kept on going. It would just keep on making this noise forever. Now, when I was testing it out, I could bypass it quite easily and make it shut up that way, because this program runs reset again quite often, but apparently stuff like Logic or whatever doesn't necessarily do that. So we could have this going on, or indeed have that going on. Or we could do our filter. And again, like I said, it seems to have gone over well with people, but there is that problem that nothing we can do inside this in certain DAWs will actually make it stop, and people were finding that difficult. So the job for today, and I dare say I can do this within the hour before. I'm going to go for about another hour and then finish up around 1, unless I'm insanely super inspired, which I don't think is terribly likely. The job for today is to get this guy going, where there's another knob and you can make it mute. And I can leave the rest of it the way that it is, because apparently that's fine. In particular, I'm going to take pains to not change the tone of it, because the tone seems to work really well for people. Although, from what I'm seeing, some gain might be handy too. I'm not really sure. That part might be fine. Double entendre? No, they are nothing. These are just blank. In the prototypes, if you start these up, it'll compile, but they don't do anything. That's so that I can go and pick something in the algorithm and go like, okay, let's make this change. Let's put in a variable and we'll use this knob as the new variable. So they got nothing to do with Chebyshev. Chebyshev is out of, I believe, my filter Pafnutty. And that's where you will find something that looks like that. It's nothing but mapping and having variables available so that I can throw a bunch of things into something I'm experimenting with and go like, okay, 6 is going to be the damping factor. Let's throw that in and see what we get. In fact, I could do that this very instant. That being one of the things that we could do. I'll show you literally what I was talking about. So we don't seem to have those assigned to anything, but I can go I'll move this over where you can see it. Sometimes I find having this on the screen distracting, but sometimes it's helpful because my stuff can be obscured. You can't read it, and I want you to be able to read it. So now we got a variable called killSwitch. And we're going to have a look at how this is being implemented. I have a filter on the very beginning of it, and we got this variable stuff going on. J, K, and L are all pass filters, so we could add something to fool with that too. And then to go in, we've got just these, which are infinite parallel householder reverbs. It's two of them running at the same time. They're running in parallel, and we're listening to both as they feed through. And the all pass is just there, so maybe that would be another good I feel like that would be another good way of doing it. So let's add another control, just because we're adding controls today. And I'll do that the easy way by duplicating this and then just changing it. Oh, we got caps lock on by mistake. Then so raw pass is like a that's going to be like a dry wet control, but it's for these all pass filters in the very beginning, and every single one is going to get a dry wet like thing, which I have at the very end here. I'll steal this. And see how we got the big all pass in the beginning of everything? And it starts out as input sample, but then we're making these various all passes and we're feeding them in, but they all start out as input samples. So what I can do is steal that and go, if, let's see, raw pass is not equal to 1, then we'll start putting the variables back. And we've got 4 of these because we have 4 all passes, we're just duplicating them. So let's see now. If it's wet, we keep it as it is, and if it's dry, we are using input sample again. See, this is the kind of thing that doesn't actually exist anywhere else, so it's one of those things where it's kind of simple to do, but the trick is to think of it. Once you think of it, the actual implementation is not that hard. So this is straight up stolen from a dry wet control. The channel plugins, depending upon how you've got them set up for, they're either the density algorithm or the spiral algorithm. And those are variations on a sine function. So the reason you're only getting second, third, fourth, fifths, and so on harmonics as you push it harder and harder is because it's a soft clip rather than a hard clip. If it was a hard clip, you'd get some of all the harmonics forever, including the ones that alias. But if it's a soft clip, you have to go harder and harder into it to generate more harmonics, and you're making a kind of ladder of harmonics as you keep going. And that is why the plugin doctor only shows you that rather than showing an entire array of harmonics like with hard clips. Weird constructor, I do have a regular schedule, and in fact it's even written on my website somewhere if I'm not mistaken, but mostly people have just learned how this works. And I do a coding stream on Mondays, and I've also taken to doing a wiring up analog synth hardware out of just raw parts on Wednesdays. So it's not really spontaneous. If I do spontaneous stuff, they kind of filter out and I end up not doing them. So what I do is I make schedules and then keep up with them as much as I can, unless I just burn out and crash, at which point I generally stop and then start much later. It's a matter of figuring out, like, okay, which thing can I do and how long can I do it for, or which things can I sustain for better. Like you'll notice I haven't been doing music streams for months. And that's because I've been refocused. I've had the porting stuff to the M1 processor. And so I had more than like pretty close to 250 plugins to redo and learning a new way of doing them all. I'm going to be doing that again with the VSTs for the new Macs. But once I'm finished with those, I might be able to start leaning in the direction of doing more music streams. And those are likely to be a little more spontaneous. But the ones as far as me coding live plugins that you'll see next Sunday or whatever, and the ones as far as the synth DIY stuff, those are more regular, partly because the coding thing seemed very useful for people. But I promised that I was going to do the DIY stream if I reached a certain Patreon goal. So that doesn't get to be spontaneous. That is like, I'll be catching up with you around 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time in the US, which makes it, 5 or so in some places in Europe. And that's every Wednesday, and that's every Monday. So let's continue with this while we're at it. I, J, K, and L. J, K, and L. So now we got a new variable. And if this raw pass number is not fully cranked out, then what we do is we put the input sample back. So this is blurring between just raw input and the all-passed version of the input. And that's a tone control that we can have that might come in handy. Then there is yet another thing that we can do, which is this feedback control. This is where this sustains forever. So let me see if I can do that conveniently. And what did I call it? I called it kill switch. We'll call that feedback because I don't think I'm using that anywhere else. And I'll quickly show you exactly what that means. I am using it, but it's okay for me to be using it. And that's what the guy asked me for. So the trick with this is that this is your regeneration thing. This is different from all the lettered ones because these are all variables for what happens, and then this is the amount to which it happens. And if I build this, it'll do a thing. We'll drag it in, we'll use it. We'll put drum samples on it because that'll be one way of hearing what's happening. And now, 5 and 6 do something, but if they're cranked out all the way, it's exactly the same as it was before. Five. We'll take these sounds, and if I set it to 0, it's no longer all passed, so I have a slight textural change going on. And 6 just cuts the feedback completely. So that's what I was being asked for, is how can we have a kill switch and make it stop? And we can kind of hear it here, like here's our dry wet. And we can sort of hear what it's doing, although it does seem to be a little damp there. So this is the infinity. And here's the difference between the all passed and the raw. You can hear sort of the echoey quality going on. You can also hear that this is one of those ones that doesn't have the, like this one is going to run different speeds for different sample rates. It's before I was doing undersampling. And I'm not going to want to change that because people were so fond of the raw one that I got to kind of keep it the way that it was. But you can plainly hear some of what goes on here. This is the difference between raw and all pass. And for that matter, we can fool around briefly by converting it to something else, and then got to make sure not to save that. It's been now ruined, but this is what infinity normally sounds like. And this is what the speed of that echo is normally sounding like. This might have uses in its own right. Like it's definitely a wacky slapback effect here. That's kind of cool. Yeah, clearly there are uses for this madness. Especially through this removing the all passes gives us another set of sounds, and that could come in handy. Particularly since we can modulate it on the fly. Yeah, so much for that coffee. So I feel like one of the things that might be good is this output trim that I've got that's drastically changing it from dry is clearly a lot louder, and the output is clearly way, way, way quieter. I think that should be on a fader as well. And the fader can default to what was the previous situation. So let's stop that and be sure not to save that. And let's go find where that was being done. Clearly we're padding this, and that's an interesting choice, but I guess it worked so far. So input sample times equals 0.5, but what else have we got there? Because it's definitely pretty quiet. This is where the compression is, the dial back, and that's how it's able to behave itself when lots of loud noise is going into it. And the entire thing is apparently running inside a version of console, so there's that too. And then we have another filter on the end of everything. So where's our level setting? Excuse me. This is our filter stuff. That too we're going to leave alone. That too was fine the way it was. But let's see. So where did this damping happen to? Damping minus floor damping. Okay. Ah, interpolation. That's what that's about. And that's happening only in one of the slots. Now I'm wondering whether it might be a good idea to do that in several or indeed all of the slots. I don't know how people are using this though. Thoughts, stream? Would it be good to ramp up the damping by applying it on more of these delays? Because I got it happening on just only the one. And that makes the dampening kick in very, very subtly. But I could definitely make it kick in harder than that. It would make it subtly different though. And I'm wondering, it would be nice if I had some of the people who were using this in chat, but I don't. Yeah, what the heck. We're going to add a bunch of flexibility to this. And in theory, using a small amount of damping might be the same as using the full damping because it's the same basic thing happening. I don't really know whether that's true. It's likely to be a subtle difference, but hopefully it's going to be satisfactory. So let's see, we're adding what? 2 new controls, and damping is going to do something subtly different. So, copy. That becomes number 6. What are the controls again? I know one of them was, this is what happens when I port too many plugins to Apple Silicon. My brain gets fried for weeks on end. Oh, goodness. Well, let me move this window so you can see what's in it first. Oop, there you go. So what was I remembering? Not that. Gosh, do I even have the initial sign function, or am I just using the output sign? I think I'm just using that. So this is not really running inside a version of console. This is running inside just a expansion. It's only a console bus output and no input. Fair enough then. I guess we'll call that good enough. Let's keep fooling with things. If that's what it is, then let's run everything inside this instance of only the bus output, including well, actually, no, that doesn't make any sense, does it? Back with you. Dry sample should be the same, but we'll run it after this filter. Which is apparently 2 levels of filter. That's interesting. I don't rightly know why I was doing it that way, but hey. So we got 2 poles of filtering on the output of everything. We got the big all pass in front of everything. And we got 1 pole of filtering before any of that. Let's have our all pass be the thing that's being hit with this filter, but the dry sample should not. So what that's going to mean is we've got dry sample. Oh yeah, there was a gain control in there. So yeah, one of the things, and let's see, what becomes 6. And what the hell was the other thing? Everything's being moved around. What do I have this as? So 4 and 5 are the things I'm concerned with. One of them is the blend between all passes and not. And then one of them is the overall regen. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Raw pass, feedback, and wet. And the one thing we can do while we do that is and what that does is it's still going to be feedback cranked up all the way is as much as possible. But what we're going to try to do is get it so that there's more sustain. Let's quickly check and see if it works. I just flipped it and then ran a power function on it power of 4, and then flipped it again. Oh my goodness. I don't know who Greg Wells is, but he is mad if he thinks that a 1202 is anything like a Neve. It is incredibly bad. That's why we like it. It is a distortion box. Neves aren't like that at all. The general amount of roll-off isn't going to be the same with the Neve either. I guess what you're thinking of is like on the dark side in a very general sense. So this should basically work. Let's see what we've got. And also let's see, what was I doing? Doing about 5 things at once, but it's all for a good purpose. I was going to not have it turned down so damn much. Let's try that. Then I'm not sure whether that's actually helpful. I think people are running it all wet, so I'm not sure that makes any sense either. And then we're making the all passes. And then let us, in fact, use dry sample instead of the all passed one. So now the all passes are filtered and the dry is not. Remembering that we still have 2 poles of filtering on the output, but this is the pole of filtering on the input that we've now disabled for part of it. And now that we've built it, let's see what we got. Can't do that because I need to quit this. Honestly, sometimes I feel that when I'm getting into that zone where I'm trying to do too many things at the same time, the stream becomes absolutely incoherent because what I'm saying no longer makes any sense. And these are the risks you run when hanging out coding with me. So full dry. We got things all passed. Filter does this. I do believe that that is working. Here's our infinite, and then that's going to be useful. So let's see whether we can get a sense of how this works. And this is a good range. All the way up here it's acting practically infinite, but then we can cut it right off down here. So filtered or dry is even a little bit brighter than that. Yeah, no worries. I swear I'm not hearing this damping and I feel like that's not good. Maybe I should be putting the additional filtering in there. Let's do our 0 all pass. Crank the filter as wide open as it goes. And with the no damping, I hear highs, but I turn the damping on. Yeah, it's a little darker. And I'll pass. Yeah, so I can sneak a little more of the brightness in there. So the question becomes, if I have added this damping factor to all of the little feedback units in there and set it to 0.25, will it sound the same as this? So let's find out. So that's an extreme setting. And we're shooting for this texture rather than this texture, which is clearly a lot brighter. Yeah, I can hear how it's a little bit darker. And again, that's running at 96K, but that shouldn't affect this at all. Over to Infinity 2. This is the bit where we're going to change these. So this is basically the same either way. So I need a parenthesis in here, like this, boop, 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 and then boop, boop, boop. But then I can just tack this stuff on at the end, and these will be ready to go. Because what we're doing is, rather than taking the raw value, we're taking it and we're scaling it a little bit. And now we need to duplicate these for each one and change them to fit. So that's going to be a B, that's going to be a C, that's going to be a D, and then F, G, and H. That's the only change I should have to do. And then once I've done that, we will have a more effective, at 4 times more effective damping factor. And hopefully it'll still get the same tone if you only set it to 1/4 of the damping. Therefore, anybody who is using the previous one should still be happy with it, is the hope. So we got a bunch of B's to put in here. Likewise for these C's. I could do it with the find and replace, but I'm not. Some days you just want to do this stuff one letter at a time. And be like, yep, everywhere I see a capital A, we're changing it into a capital D, and that should do the thing. Or indeed, F. My finger still hurts a bit from where I was trying to carve aluminum and gave it a nasty cut. I hope that stops at some point. That was very much a bachelor style of trouble. It's the kind of thing where if you're a single guy and you're doing that kind of thing, you're like, oh, I need to put some duct tape on this, and then just hurt for a while. And If I was shacked up with somebody, they would have been like, no, you are going to the emergency room, and then I would have had to do it. And it probably would have been for the best. So there's a thought. Here's another thought. Let's see what this does. Now we got a sort of drony, sustainy thing going on here. And 0.25 should be what I had before. Kinda. Okay, let's see if we can damp it right out. I feel fairly comfortable with that. I think it's working. Let's give it a full all pass. I do have a sense that I'm getting a feedback node in there, and that's doubtless because I'm manipulating a infinite householder reverb. Like it really wants to not be damped at all. But if we do this, we can start to get something happening there. I know what I need to do. I need to test it with the note silence or something. So if this feeds back, this will tell me something, although it actually might not feed back in a harmful way. So we have full damping on. And if it gets louder and louder to the point where it blows up, that means that the filtering, the damping filtering that I'm doing is misguided. And while we're waiting for that to happen, for which it might not, Bro has another question. Don't worry about having too many questions. People are mostly not talking. This is why I was thinking about if I was going to do like Minecraft streaming or whatever, I was just going to pre-record it and not have anybody in a chat of any kind. Because generally when I do have somebody in a chat, nobody says or asks anything. So partly due to just being really obscure, but partly it's because people don't really have much to say about this stuff. I do not know what you mean by your Apogee Symphony desktop. Wouldn't that be a converter that you can just plug in and use? I guess that would depend upon the one, right? Like for me, what I'm doing is my monitoring, which you're actually hearing very slightly in the background there, is running through a Lavery. Like I'll turn it up. So this is a Lavery converter. It's a mastering grade converter, but it needs to be given either a AES input or technically an optical input. Either way, it's going to be a AES EBU input or some kind of light pipe. And I'm using another converter to plug that into the computer. That is the Motu 16A that I use to capture stuff with. And so the outputs, the digital outputs of the Motu are what's feeding the Lavry. That doesn't mean that the Apogee is going to work the same way. So talk more about the specific things that you've got, and I might be able to answer that. For now, I don't really know the answer to your question, because I don't have an Apogee Symphony. One thing I will tell you, though, is I don't feel like I'm getting that out of control feedback from the damping. Like, the damping is making stuff be sort of in a dark zone, which is more or less what I had in mind, but it's not causing an overwhelming feedback effect, and that's satisfactory to me. And now we will hear the all passes and the lack of filtering. That made it a little bit louder. Yeah, not using the all passes seems to give me more capacity to put loud noises into this. Let's wait around and hear what it does the next time around. And one more boost. Yeah, I think I'm satisfied. And the difference between that and no damping, and again, like 25% is probably maximum of what I had on tap before. Now we go all the way to 1, we go to 4 times as much. And without damping, that initial sound coming into the effect will sound like this. And we can plainly hear the grindy noise on top there. So as far as mastering grade AD-DA converter, it is not. It is only a DA converter. And it's a Lavry. It's a Lavry DA10. I do actually have a Lavry AD. It's not set up in my rig right now because it's only 2 channels. It's only stereo. So what I have that hooked up is actually if I switch over the input, I'm monitoring it. And it's hooked up where I can listen to vinyl records over it. So. Let's make that high frequency grindiness go away. Okay, very nice. Yeah. And away it goes with the feedback turned down. I think that's more or less the gist of it. Remembering that some of the ways that it runs are designed for Let's throw alien kittens at it just for laughs. Let's see what it does when we hit it with way too much volume. No damping. No, not that. Okay, that's freaky. Yeah, new trick we can do with it. It's a weird delay kind of thing going on now. Okay, yeah, now you can do this with it. I'm going to swap the position of the size and damping controls. Doing the the VST is going to be a bit of a pain in the butt, all these changes. But oh yeah, defaults. All pass default B1, feedback default B1, wet dry default B1. Okay. And damping B0. Okay. You know, taking it this far, I think I'm about ready to start trimming some of these extra controls off. Let's do that. I'll get it to where it looks like the final thing by the time I finish streaming. That'll be fun, right? So let's see. 6 parameters there. This all looks basically fine. Gotta adjust these. Yeah, bro, Lavery does not cost $10,000. No. Maybe there exists Laveries that do cost $10,000, but mine are not that. I have not been in that league ever. Which is a bit of a downer if people wanted me to do plugins of them, because it's like, oh, you want me to do the plugin of the $10,000 Lavery? Ha ha ha. Yeah, that's not happening. Likewise, for some of the old samplers and things like that, like $10,000 samplers, ain't going to be seeing them from me unless the Patreon gets really huge, which I kind of doubt. And even if it did, I've kind of committed to turning the superfluous money into sending parts to people, so I guess remains to be seen. I could ask people whether they wanted me to do the one thing or the other. Oh, let's see, here we go. Save that. Build it, and this might be our final form. What would you do with an Infinity 2 that looked like this? Oh, hang on. Not quite done yet. I forgot to do a thing. Silly me. Got all busy doing that and I didn't do the other. Damping and size were going to be switched. Now let's see if that makes sense. And if it does, we'll play with it for 10 minutes and then I'll log off. I got to actually go and call my mechanic. So my car has some stuff that needs to be done with it, and the poor mechanic, he had a hernia and had an operation to fix the hernia, but kept working and didn't let himself heal properly. If I can put some kind of compression in here so that if we do this kind of madness, it doesn't blow up too hard. Because this is a hot output. It'll be enough to just ride the feedback and seem legit. If you know you got stuff in there that's going to get really hot, you kind of ride the feedback and then it stops doing its thing as much. Because that's kind of what the algorithm already does. It's just an additional feature that will let you do that. almost like that's going to be an effective way of doing it. Again, we not know all pass. If we have all pass, it sounds like this. A little bit more spacey. I wonder if I have a good sample that would show me something. I know. I have this noise. Let's run this noise into it. This is actually literally from the guy that wanted me to update the plugin. This guy is the guy who wanted a new version of Infinity. So let's see what it does. No all pass. No filter, no damping. Because he might be running sounds like this into it. Or if we did have all pass, it would be this. And let's leave it with no all pass. It's a machine shop. Now let's make it darken itself. You make it go far enough away, and it's got this sort of vague spaceshipy feel. I think that that'll work. Oh no, ketamine simulator. Yeah, there you go. Have fun. No, this is what your brain feels like on ketamine. Although actually, now that you mention it, I think I get what you're talking about. You get it going on like this, everything full crank, because a raw sample is like this. And that could be the jet engine. And then once you're inside the jet, and you're going very fast, and there are many layers of things insulating from the noise, it does come out kind of like that. Not so bad, not bad. I think it's being helped by the way that I moved that console bus style stage outside of all the filters. I think that's helping it. There's all this stuff, it's always in the details of it. Like we can have a filtered sound like this, but where the nonlinearity sits in there matters a great deal. I wonder if I can make it go up to even higher frequencies without having it die. Let's find out. One final game. Size times 90 plus 10. 99 plus 1. And, you know, that's probably, well, let's find out. Now we'll copy it in there. And now let's see what we get out of the same noise with our newly mangled thing, which goes to the same maximum range. But our minimum range is very different now. Okay. That's less interesting. There's a whole wide range in here that doesn't seem very interesting. But maybe that's just me thinking it. I mean, as long as we're doing this horrible buffer bustering stuff, why not have it be able to go up that high note? Thing is, though, there's so much space in that note that I think I should take it back down to a power of 2. And doing that will go right back into there again. Doing that means that it'll hit the same note, but there's less space to do it. See, it's right up here, rather than being the whole first quarter of the control. Yeah, Loopy's gonna like this. That's very unpleasant. That's appalling. Yeah, this is gonna work for this guy. Remember, this is his raw noises, right? So this is what he wants. And coming Sunday, I can give him a plugin that does this. Yup. Oh wait, we can get even worse. I forgot to take the alt pass off. Oh man. Ow. Turn it down, man. Yep. The person that gave me this test sound is going to like this version of the plugin. I am certain of that. So I'm going to call that a job well done. Let's close out of here. And you should see that plugin showing up this coming Sunday. Oh, bro has a quick question. I would say Lavery. I'm a big Lavery fan. I like the stuff that he does. What you would use Burl for is if you wanted everything to be really like lush and slick and expensive sounding and fancy. Lavery is more just capture the atmosphere of what it's being fed. Put across the vibe and the whatever experience you're feeding into the inputs without making it sound more or less fancy than it already is. Crane Song I'm not familiar with, although I know that they're good. So I'm a Lavery fan, and there are things that you would go for Burl for, but Burl is like, it's the comparison between API and Neve pre's. Like, you can go with API if you just want the fullest intensity of everything that you're putting into the converter or the microphone to be communicated. And Neve might get you more in the way of sounding rich and lush and expensive and fancy and stuff. It's the same deal with Lavery and Burl, if I'm not mistaken. Burl is going to get you slightly fatter and richer and more interesting, but it's because they have, transformer coupling and so on and so forth, whereas Lavery is just straight up accurate as near as I can tell. And you can do fairly well even with like the Motu that I've got, the 16A, is not too shabby. Like, it's okay. It might not be the greatest thing in the world, but it's all right. And yeah, these are all good things. But yeah, so that is Infinity 2, and you should be seeing that this coming Sunday because I might as well. I am going to be working on those filters that are inspired by the Emu Z-Plane stuff, which is not really the fancy Z-Plane stuff. It's like the Z-Plane adaptation of very simple 6 and 12 dB low pass, high pass, and band pass filters. Because it turns out some of the folks that have been using those things to good effect fell back on that basicness rather than trying to do the really funky, weird, neat stuff that the Z-Plane things can do. And a lot of people were saying that. They were saying like, well, you can do a complicated multi-filter thing where it morphs between this and that, but it'll take you all day to just try to set it up. And then once you've set it up, it kinda works, but it doesn't really give you anything all that great. So they tend to fall back on the simple stuff, but they like those filters because of the way that that approach to it adapts to the simple stuff that they use. And it's going to be interesting to look into. So yeah, we'll say bye to chat. Will I make a cassette desk plugin? Wait, and I've got tape-based things to address as well, and those have kind of fallen by the wayside for the moment, what with all of the porting things to M1 and so on, but those are still going to be looked into. And I could see something like that happening, but it's not going to happen right now. So on that note, I will talk to you folks later. Bye-bye.